Okay, folks, without any further ado, I'm going to bring you your master of ceremonies, the gentleman you just heard, Mr. David Von Kleist, to bring you your next speaker. Come on up, Dave.
All right. Will you millers please stop milling? Everybody in the back, you think I don't see you? We have surveillance cameras and some of us have been chipped. Of course, I'm only kidding. Somebody's going to take that statement out of context. See, Von Kleist admits that he's been chipped. Oh, please. All right, let's get everybody to get their seats. Now, the whole purpose of having these conferences are to provide freedom. Now, the only way that you can provide freedom is to be able to inform yourself as to what your freedoms are. As they say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Well, some folks, when they go into this information, like some of the stuff we were just talking about in my presentation, some folks find this absolutely terrifying to entertain the concept that we could be so deceived. It's impossible that they would even think of something this diabolical. Wait a minute. Ian Fleming writes novels about 007, and those are diabolical. Tom Clancy writes novels about all kinds of agents, and that's diabolical. Are we to believe that people in charge of our government and intelligence are incapable of diabolical thought? Think outside the cage, folks. They've been at this for a long time, and they are very well versed, and they have a lot of practice. And the sad fact is the American sheep will go for it time after time after time after time. That's because they haven't been informed. Knowledge is power. If you don't have any knowledge, you are powerless. Mankind has a fear of the unknown. Common sense tells me that if you turn the unknown into a known, the fear will dissipate. It's a little difficult at first, but once you get by it, hey, you develop a taste for the truth, the lie will never do. Well, the sad fact is that there are some folks that pay dearly for the audacity and the unmitigated gall of stepping outside of the cage of thought and trying to inform others of what they have found. Well, this is why there are so many heroes in this movement, and why folks like Joe Banister need to be recognized for the American heroes that they are. Ladies and gentlemen, now, Joe Banister's been out there fighting for all the folks out there, whether they know about him or not. And again, you know, America has been raised and weaned on a steady diet of lies, misinformation, and disinformation. So again, think outside of the cage, folks. How do we base our opinions? On what do we base our opinions? If we base our opinions on lies, then that means our opinions are extensions of the lies. And unfortunately, it takes an awful lot of effort for us to break out of those barriers. If you ask people, now here's something I would like each and one of you to do. Now, yes, it's a proactive stance, all right? Now, when you're out and about in your daily life and you go into a convenience store, pull a Peter Falk on the cash register. You know, I've been thinking. You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much trust do you have in the media to tell you the truth? And the people will think for a minute and they'll blink. My God, this guy's asking me a question. Seriously, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust the media to tell you the truth? Most people will come back and say, oh man, maybe a 3 or a 4. I say 30 to 40%. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust the federal government to tell you the truth? Oh, maybe a 1 or a 2 or a 0. Okay, so maybe, 10%. Yeah, okay. If you were to take a test and you scored between a 30 and a 40%, would you pass or fail? If you took a test and got a 10%, would you pass or fail? And they say fail. Okay, fine. Final question. Where do you get all of your official information? This is where the blinking really starts happening. Because they realize they get it from the mainstream media and government officials. And again, if they're feeding us horse hockey and baloney, then that means our opinions are horse hockey and baloney. Folks, if you want to get the real deal and find out what the truth is never easy to find. That means if it's so easy for us to sit at home on our big fat pimple-covered butts with a sweaty remote in our hand and channel surf between Fox and CNN and, let me see, MSNBC and ABC. If it's that easy, how much truth could there be? Obviously. So folks, if you want to find the truth, you have to look for it. Look for alternative news sources. Boy, have I got that on my mind, right? American Free Press is a good source. So, the Idaho Observer is a good source. GCN Radio Network's a good source. All of these different outlets for alternative information are going to give you a whole lot more reliable information than you're going to get from the proven propagandists. And that's why when you have people that step forward and at first they stick out like a sore thumb and everybody goes, no, it can't be. They're persecuted and prosecuted. But that's the way it goes. It's always a 10% that leads the 90%. And one of the leaders, one of the people, and again, I will say that this man is an American hero for the sacrifices that he has made and continues to make on a daily basis. He needs all of us to support him and all of us to take his information to heart, cleave it unto our being, and go out into the masses and spread the word, because Joe Banister ain't no liar. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joe Banister. Give him a round of applause.
Somebody get me some water when you get a chance. How's everyone today? That's good. I guess if I was still working for the IRS, they'd call this bureaucratic bumbling, but I usually seem to go more near the end of the day. I didn't realize I was going now. So, I've got my general little speech and presentation that I give, but I had some documents, some PDF documents and things that I don't have. I mean, they were in my room. I didn't bring it because it was too much to carry. So somebody's helping me to scramble for that right now, and I guess what I'm going to have to do is just kind of wing it, or, I've done it enough years. I don't know, does anybody realize that it's been 8 years since I left the IRS? February 25th, 1999. That was on my birthday, by the way. So every time I get to celebrate my birthday, I get to celebrate the most incredible things.
8 years of recovery?
A recovery, yes. So, anyway, I see the CD has arrived. So I'm really, really blessed that that's on its way. Well, one thing that's a little bit difficult is because it's been 8 years, I know hands are shown that people have seen certain things before, they haven't, and, so I hate to bore people with the same old story. It's not boring, someone said. Well, that's very kind of you. But apparently the word is getting out, which is very encouraging, should be for all of us. This is really awesome, because I thought it'd be about 10 minutes from now that we'd get a little audio-visual help. Yeah, who's that sleek slimmer there in the screensaver? Maybe we should just look at that throughout my speech. Well, I know they have a schedule to run, so I'll try to kind of start at least. I believe that I was blessed. Certainly no saint as a youngster, as an adult, but I was blessed with a pretty good middle class upbringing. Now, am I going to be making the choices on myself, or?
Yeah, unless you want us to do it, you can find somebody to.
If I can get those thumbnails where I can actually just click.
Click on the Pages tab. Can you come up here? Left-hand side, click on the Pages.
If you know, I could sure use some help. Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. That's coming to where I would be familiar with me. Yeah, this is the story of bank robbers, thieves. There's one right there. Remember that face? Anyway, so I was blessed with a pretty decent upbringing, and so I have to thank my parents for taking the time and effort. Anyone who's a parent knows what a struggle that is, 24/7. So I have to put a little plug in for my folks, the hard work that they did, they've done for so many of you. But basically, we went to a Catholic grammar school and Catholic high school, and I was one of those kids who actually listened, in religion class, and listened to the priests and the nuns, and they'd spank me once in a while, but I somehow escaped without too many injuries. And but those lessons about that you're a moral being and that you should have integrity and certainly care about your fellow man, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those are lessons that I learned early on, and they stayed with me for quite some time. After I graduated from college in 1986, I worked in my degree was in accounting, a business degree in accounting, and I worked in the private sector for a number of years, from basically 87 until 1993. And during that time, I earned my CPA certificate, Certified Public Accountant, from the state of California in 1991, and worked in what they call public accounting. The big accounting firms, kind of like the banks, they continue to consolidate until pretty soon there'll just be one accounting firm in the whole world, I guess. That's where they want to end up. But at the time I was there, it was called the Big Eight. And there were 8 large accounting firms, and I worked for Pete Marwick, which became KPMG. They're still around. And I was getting a lot of good experience in the private sector, but in the early 90s, I kind of looked at what my supervisors were doing and where my career was taking me, and I really wasn't that excited about it. Now, you might think, since the proverbial accountant and accounting is kind of a boring job, you might be thinking, Joe, why didn't you clue in a little earlier? Accounting isn't all that fun. But it turned out that I don't know how many can see that particular photo. My father passed away in 1993, actually just a few months before I started with the IRS. But I guess perhaps part of the reason why the accounting field wasn't really making my motor run was that there was something in our blood, something in the Banister blood. My brother John on the far left is a sergeant in the California Highway Patrol. My brother Jeff is a police officer with the city of San Jose. My mom is not an undercover agent. Next is my brother Jim. He's a captain in the Daly City Fire Department. And at the time that photo was taken, I was a special agent in the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. They had all the uniforms, and I had the standard Fed issue uniform, the tie and gun to drill in your ear. Anyway, the way that I arrived at the IRS was, as I say, wasn't that thrilled with. I enjoyed being an accountant for the most part, but it just didn't seem that thrilling. So I decided to pursue some kind of a law enforcement career. And what I'm going to do, sir, is I'll give you a number which should correspond to those page numbers. Let's try to give you a little help, and I really appreciate your help. So what I did was to pursue this law enforcement career. I didn't know quite where I'd end up. As you can see, my family tended to go with the uniforms and badges, but I had this accounting degree, and as you probably can imagine, certainly local and state agencies aren't trolling around looking for accountants who are bored. So I chose to go in more of an investigative path. And I applied to both the FBI and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. And it turned out that the FBI they had a hiring freeze at about the time that I applied. So even though I was qualified and passed through all of their rigorous testing, they weren't able to actually extend me an appointment letter. Meanwhile, the IRS contacted me, I believe it was about August of 1993, just a month after my dad passed away. And my dad, both my parents, of course, I love very much. My dad was one of my biggest cheerleaders. He's very encouraging to me, and so it was kind of ironic, I guess, that he would pass away just a month before the IRS would call me, because I think that he was proud of his kids, and they'd all at least had the ability to pass the rigorous background checks that are becoming more and more prevalent nowadays. So it made him proud, but I couldn't share my enthusiasm for wanting to pursue a law enforcement career. But in August of 1993, I'd waited by that time for quite some time for the FBI to stop this hiring freeze, and I kept waiting and nothing was happening. So in August of 93, I got a call from the San Francisco IRS Criminal Investigation Division office asking me if I'd be interested in a special agent position with the IRS. And the IRS, actually they keep morphing and changing to try to, I guess, stay one step ahead of all the people that are learning that they're one big fraud. But anyway, when I was there, and for some years after, they were broken down into many divisions, but the three most well-known ones were the examination division, which was staffed by people that would come out and audit you, the collection division, which was staffed by people that would take money out of your bank account, put a lien out there to sap up all the equity in your home, or garnish your wages. And then the third division was the criminal investigation division, and that was staffed, I think it's still about the same number of personnel, about 3,000 special agents who are criminal investigators who investigate violations of the federal income tax and money laundering laws. So, I had actually had my heart set on the FBI, but because of this freeze, here the IRS is kind of knocking on my door, and I was more geared towards the FBI because the FBI has TV shows and movies about them, and if you try to think about the IRS, they keep on rehashing that old Al Capone thing, which is getting a little bit old. That they got Al Capone, but there's no, other than that, there's not a whole lot of uplifting, great stuff about the IRS. So that kind of affected me. But when I looked more into the agency and what it did, I felt that, wow, I've got financial skills and experience, and the fact of the matter is they seem to be doing pretty interesting work. It's certainly necessary to protect the Treasury, to make sure that taxes that are supposed to be collected are collected and that people pay their taxes. So the job prospect kind of grew on me, and I went ahead and competed for the position and was successful in getting the position. So in November of 1993, I was sworn in the Oakland, California federal building as a special agent. And the first 3 years of my career there, I really enjoyed myself. Now, you might think that, okay, well, see, he's a closet power freak, and he really liked to just, destroy people's lives, and that wasn't it at all. I was working on very high-level investigations of drug smugglers, money launderers, and, tax evaders, people who were coming up with very elaborate schemes to not pay income tax. So the first 3 years of my career, I have to say that they were fulfilling. I was actually chided quite often at work for working too hard. We worked 50-hour work weeks, and we were supposed to take like an hour lunch break. And I truthfully would just work through lunch. I'd bring my lunch and I'd eat. I mean, you probably look at me how skinny I am that I just don't eat at all, but I do eat. But I would kind of eat on the run. I love the work that much, and I just saw so much crime out there that I thought, maybe if I skip these lunches, I'll get it all. So, what happened after this 3-year period was kind of tumultuous in my life, of course. I was listening to a talk radio show. The host's name is Jeff Metcalf, Geoff Metcalf. He used to be on a station called KSFO. And he had a lady on this show named DV Kidd. Her website is devvy.com. And DV was making these claims about the income tax, the federal income tax, the income tax that I was out there enforcing and running and gunning. And so normally, if I had heard these claims that she was making on this show, I would have dismissed them as just craziness, baloney, BS. Not much different than if I were walking by this hall here and hearing this talk. I'd be like, I'm not even going to waste my time listening to that stuff. But she was on this show, and I had listened to this show of Jeff Metcalf's for the prior 2 years. And I really considered it to be him, to be an honest host. He wasn't partisan, much like Dave was saying earlier, or that Aaron says in his movie. It's not about Republican or Democrat. He was just about right and wrong, which, of course, I liked. So when he had this woman, DV Kidd, speaking about the income tax, and basically her message was that the majority of Americans weren't required to pay it. She spoke about the 16th Amendment having never been ratified. She spoke about the Federal Reserve and, the litany of topics that you're probably fairly familiar with. I wasn't at the time. And she offered a couple of booklets that could be ordered for like $1 each. And so I went ahead and ordered the booklets. Now the thing is that one of the myths that was exploded right then and there, that I had been taught, was that these so-called tax protesters were in this for the money. So I'm thinking, okay, well this lady must be making big bucks off of these 50-page pamphlets and charging $1 for them. Wow. So that wasn't happening. If you could switch to page 3. Thank you. Thank you. So I ordered the booklets, and that gave me a whole bunch more research and investigation to do. And I have to say, maybe it was arrogance, but maybe just could be arrogant. I don't know. I felt like, wow, these claims cannot possibly be true, but I just need to make sure for myself so that I can move on with my life. And so I really expected that this claim that the income tax was, basically a fraud or that wasn't required to be paid, that I could kind of dismiss it within a couple weeks of doing a little research. And so I set out on this little project and, started reading, and of course it just became this rabbit hole that just went on and on and on and on and on, as you know. But, I did have some investigative skills and training courtesy of the IRS. So I put, you'd be happy to know as taxpayers or former taxpayers or friends of taxpayers that that you got some good return on the training that I received at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. So I put these investigative skills to use and just started to investigate, research things that really I had never learned of before. You might think that, well, hey, if you're a CPA and the IRS trusts you to carry a gun and a badge around, that, you must be, you must know your stuff from top to bottom. Well, the fact of the matter is, a lot of the stuff that you learn is very introductory. They don't get into very much detail. Even if you're, an A student, and I was just an average student. But, things about the Constitution, direct versus indirect taxation, I could go on and on with the issues, liability. They would train us more with what's a deduction, what's an earned income credit, things that already presuppose that you owed the tax, just ways that you could reduce the tax that you owed. So hearing this other perspective that D.V. Kidd kind of started me on the road of, looking at the foundation of the tax, the history of the tax, the way it was administered in the early 1900s, the mid-1900s, while I was a special agent, began to kind of see a bigger picture than the very narrow focus that I was given as a special agent. And the basic result of this investigation was that I proved, at least to myself, that that her claims were basically true. That the IRS and everything that they were telling the public was, if not false, certainly deceitful and a lot of double talk. And if they'd answer a question at all, they would answer a question that wasn't asked. Have you ever seen that occur? Just putting whatever horsepower, whatever skills I could bring to the table, was putting these skills to trying to figure out who's telling the truth. That's really all that I wanted to find out. But at the end of this, it was a 2-year period, basically, all of 97 and all of 1998, and then a few months in 99. Realized that, well, I really tried to disprove these claims, but as far as I can tell, they're largely true. Perhaps I've made a mistake somewhere along the way, but, I've done the best I can. So I went to my supervisors at the IRS, and I presented them with a report that was basically not everything I had researched by any means. And I guess I also have to clarify, my research or investigation was really to validate things that already existed, okay? I don't take any credit for creating any new, ABC plan or anything like that. It was basically that I was told as a special agent that people like you and now us are crackpots, that you go to the copy machine and you grab a bunch of stuff and you kind of put it all together and you wave the magic wand and poof, you say, hey, you don't know the income tax. And that's what the IRS tries to lead, certainly its employees and the public, to believe, that this stuff is just a crock, don't even bother looking at it. That was, my perspective, and that was how I approached trying to validate these claims. So, of course, coming to the conclusion that that explanation from the IRS was baloney, and that really that was a ploy that the IRS would use to keep people from learning the truth, from seeing the message, that really concerned me, especially since, on day one of my job, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And I was mindful of that oath constantly, consistently. It really meant something to me, especially since I swore the oath to God. And I don't take that lightly, and I don't think anyone should. Anyway, I got to keep this moving along so I can get as much information to you as possible. I did present the information as I saw it. I asked for some input from my supervisors. Issued my report to them, and I said, look, I've gone to bat. This is basically what I said. I've gone to bat for the agency, the income tax system, and I've surprisingly come to conclusions that I'm not really happy with, but they're my best shot at it. Can you guide me? Can you show me the error of my analysis, if any? And their response to me was that they would not show me, they wouldn't talk to me about it at all, and that they immediately sent me home on administrative leave for a week. Took my gun, they didn't take my badge at that point, but they took my gun and they sent me home for a little unplanned vacation. And they said, we'd be happy to provide you with the paperwork to tender your resignation. So that was their response to me. And at that point, I had been there nearly 5.5 years. I had received, and this is not to toot my own horn, it's just to tell you the facts. I received a number of awards. I was close to entering into management. All the managers were saying, hey, Joe, when are you going to come up to management? And I was given lots of responsibilities. I had quite a wide variety of experience. If there were agents that needed help with somebody or from someone, another agent who they knew they could trust, if you were going in on a search warrant with shotguns and handguns pulled and ready, they wanted me to assist them. If they got a case where they had 50 boxes of documents, with all the evidence was in there somewhere, like a needle in a haystack, they would ask for my assistance. So I had a wide variety of skills. And up to the point of telling them that I had some questions about the income tax, I was a great guy. After I started having questions about the income tax, I was a great guy with two heads. Just a crazy man. There's something wrong with me. So they basically showed me the door, and I was concerned that they would destroy or attempt to destroy my reputation, which I thought was one of my assets that I needed to keep as long as I could. And so I resigned on February 25th, 1999. Now, from that point forward, the IRS kind of took a hands-off, disavow that this person even exists, that he worked for the IRS. And pretended, that we don't know about Joe Banister. We don't know about his report. We don't know what you're talking about, when people would call the IRS to inquire. And I found out later, and you probably can't see that very well, but they basically, in a recent FOIA request, I asked to get all the documents that they've been keeping on me, and they said it would cost $6,700 to get the documents and information that they've been maintaining on me. Now, I would compare that to the fact that they refused to answer my sincere questions at the time I worked for the IRS, and of course they've refused for the last 8 years to meet. And I could go on and on about all the attempts I've made in conjunction with others to try to get answers, and they just don't want to give them. But that.
Do they recognize the truth of what you told them?
Well, I don't know. The question was, do they recognize the truth of what I told them? They don't want to recognize the truth, because that might mean that then they would have to put their pension and paycheck at risk. That's my personal opinion. Anyway, so this gives you some idea that the agency that, at least for sometimes said I didn't exist and that I don't know what you're talking about, was certainly busy accumulating enough stuff on me to charge me $6,700 just to see it. So let's see, if we could go to number 6. And maybe just up near the top where it shows the... I know. Well, thank you. That's awesome. So after I resigned in February of '99, it believe it or not, actually attracted attention that an IRS criminal investigator would, do what I did, which to me, I didn't seem anything special about it. All I did was do some research and investigation according to the way I was trained, adhere to my oath, seek direction from my supervisors at the IRS, get no answer, and get shown the door. That got people's attention. And so I would just go out when I was invited and speak about that process. And in fact, my first speech, I believe, was at the Freedom Law School back in 1999. Was anybody there for that? All right. So I've gotten a little less nervous since then, thankfully. the target's even bigger on my back, but I get less nervous. So anyway, like I say, there was an interest. There were people that thought it was curious that somebody in my capacity would even, exert the brain power to even look into the issue, let alone come to the conclusion that so many people prayed would occur, and then, confront the supervisors and the whole bit. So, over, from say 1999 through 2000, 2001, 2002, there'd be various opportunities, some so-called mainstream and some not, where there'd be information put out into space about my situation. I appeared on C-SPAN 2, 60 Minutes 2. I guess I never seem to make it to the one, like C-SPAN or 60 Minutes. I'm always at the second, but that's fine with me, just to get the word out. New York Times, occasional mention, many misquotes, thanks to David K. Johnston. But there was attention. There was attention drawn to it. And of course, what I have learned, it's kind of the hard way, is that, the more attention you get, the more of a target you become from the IRS, because they just cannot coexist with credible people who are questioning their conduct. Cannot happen, and they won't let it happen. So what happened was, it was in 2003, so that had been 3 years or so, 3-4 years since I resigned from the IRS. The IRS filed a complaint against me, alleging that I had engaged in, are you ready for this? Disreputable conduct. Did you know that the IRS, their job isn't just to collect income tax, Virginia. Their job is to also monitor whether your conduct is disreputable. And the IRS, now is this like the pot calling the kettle black? The IRS said, accused me of acting disreputably. So they filed a complaint against me. Now, what had occurred also, I don't know, some people think, or they asked me, they thought that maybe I just went on the road and was just speaking all the time and that was my full-time job. Not at all. I had a family, priority list of, making a living and providing for family, and that was my main focus. And when I could, I would get out and speak or get on the radio, whatever it might be. But occasionally people would ask me to, in my capacity as a CPA, to actually go into the IRS and advocate on their behalf. Maybe it's kind of similar to what an attorney would do for someone in court. The IRS, there's actually an opportunity for a certified public accountant or an enrolled agent to kind of advocate for their clients. And so I was doing that here and there. Well, if I do say so myself, I was quite aggressive when I would represent these people. And if I saw what I thought was fraud or procedures that were bypassed or ignored or something was wrong with the picture, I would call the IRS on it, on behalf of the client. And so what the IRS basically did is they accused me of being this Pied Piper that would lead all these people down a road of not paying their taxes. And I wasn't conducting myself in that way at all. These are people that would make their own decisions, and I was simply serving in the capacity of their advocate to try to give them some assistance as they battled with the IRS. Didn't think it was that much of a problem. Are you saying 10 minutes? Wow. Running out of time. So they gave this complaint to me, and I got to make a long story very short. They basically professed that this process of making this complaint was to protect the public from me. Okay, and if you go to number 13. Well, I'll just keep talking. They wanted to hold the hearing, which I was supposed to get, on a military base in San Francisco Bay, on an island that was only approachable by bridge. But yet, all along, they're professing they want to protect the public from me, but they don't want the public to attend the proceeding to determine, just how bad I was. Now, does that sound a little strange to you? And then I do have to super fast forward here. This went on and on and on. I appealed the decision, which was adverse to me. And my appeal went to the Secretary of the Treasury, who was John Snow at the time. Guess what John Snow did? He delegated his decision-making responsibility back to the IRS. And the IRS rendered a decision on my appeal of the IRS complaint. Yeah, checks and balances in our federal government are working quite smoothly, aren't they? So, so I really got to fast forward. So that, but that wasn't. I got a fair amount of mileage out of that because when you have these agencies who are not built upon truth come after you, and there has to be these different forums that they have to go to. They pull every dirty trick in the book, but the truth somehow squeezes through. It comes through. And so I just keep on milking that truth and hoping to get these little nuggets as we go along. So I would invite you to go to my website, freedomabovefortune.com. I've got as many of the documents as I could post up there about this whole history. So take your time and go through it and see for yourself whether the government's telling the truth or Joe Banister is, or make up your own mind. So the bottom line was that my appeal, which was judged by the IRS, they ruled against me a second time, obviously, and disbarred me from practice before the IRS. So that means that I could no longer assist clients, by going into the IRS on their behalf. That's how that ended up. But that didn't appear to be good enough for them, because then in November of 2004, this disreputable character was indicted on 4 federal felony counts. 3 counts of preparing a false amended income tax return, and 1 count of defrauding the United States of America. And it all related to work I had done, again, on behalf of a client. So the statutory maximum for those charges was 14 years in prison. Now, it turned out that probably with sentencing guidelines, it would have been more like only 2 or 3. But, who wants to spend 2 or 3 days in prison? I don't. So, but anyway, was indicted on these charges in November of 2004. And, again, long story, so you're going to have to go to my website and catch up on all the details. But I spent about 7 months getting my defense together. Had the Bernhoft law firm in Milwaukee, Robert Bernhoft, Bernhoft, represent me, and just did a wonderful job. Had people from all over the country praying for me, supporting me financially, helping me to get on this battle with Goliath. And of course, as you might imagine or know personally, the way the IRS does business, it's like the proverbial bull in the china shop. They've got all the resources, they've got all the weight, and they're just going to mow you down. And fortunately, with blessings from above, I had the prayers I needed and the financial support to survive and meet these people in a courtroom with 12 of my peers judging my conduct. And the trial occurred in June of 2005. And, of course, it's not fun being subjected to this and thinking that if the jury doesn't see it your way, you're going to go to prison for a while. And that's going to cause a little disruption to your life. But after, I think it was about a 5-day trial, the jury found me not guilty on all charges. Who'd have thunk it? Now, of course, for an investigator, which I used to be, you know why they have investigations? Is to find out whether or not there's been a law broken, right? And so often, I saw it with my own eyes, when they do investigations and find that there's no law broken, and they move on to the next one. But in my case, it was a little different. They didn't move on to the next one. They just went ahead anyway, even though they couldn't find any evidence. For example, they accused me of preparing 3 false federal income tax returns. Do you know that the government would not even enter those 3 returns into evidence? I mean, can you imagine accusing someone of preparing a false return, but then not wanting the jury to see it? I just, amazing. There's also, well, you know what? Let's see if we can go to this one, because you got to see this before I depart. Go to number 48, please. Question was, have I written a book? No. Well, I have the report that I issued to the IRS, and a fair portion of that is on my website. You can download it for free. I think Paymon also has copies of it as well. If you can magnify that or increase it, I just think this is really, really important. If you haven't kind of gotten the theme of this, I really am just a regular guy who happened to have a job at the IRS, and it was an investigative job, and I was presented with these claims, and I wanted to find out the truth so that I could go to work every day and feel good and sleep at night, feel good about what I was doing. Didn't think that was too much to ask. And really all of this has gone on because of the ridiculous, suspicious, deceitful way in which the government has reacted to all of my efforts. And of course, the same thing goes with, as you saw with Aaron's movie, right? It's the same dance card over and over and over again. Anyway, I'm going to have to put on my old man glasses here so that I can... Are there people that can't see that, probably? Because I can barely see. All right, well, let me just give you the background, and then I'm going to have to cut this off. That helps. All right. There was a prosecutor. Was there one of those little laser things here? Anyway, there was a prosecutor. He still is a prosecutor. Her name is Tom. Oh, thank you. Is this thing loaded?
Yeah. Get your finger out of the way. There you go.
Okay. All right. The prosecutor's name was Tom DiLeonardo. He's still a prosecutor, I think in New Jersey. He's an assistant United States attorney. Well, at the time I worked at the IRS, he was a trial attorney for the Department of Justice Tax Division. And in all these experiences I've had, I truly believe that the divine hand is like I just kind of let him guide me, and he guides me, and just amazing things occur. Well. I happened to encounter Tom DiLeonardo in Washington, D.C. at the corner of Constitution Avenue where the IRS building is. And then a few months later, I encountered Tom again at the San Jose, California IRS building. Literally, out of the blue. We bump into each other. And so Tom made a remark to me. He said, Joe, it's really a shame that you're hanging around with these greedy people. And he's referring, to us, that our motivation is about greed. It's about keeping all of our money and not wanting to give it to anybody, and because we're greedy. And of course I had a problem with that, and I said, Tom, that's not the way it is at all. I and all of the people that I hang with are extremely honest and principled, and we just happen to we expect a certain amount of decency and justice and honesty from our government. And we're not getting the straight scoop regarding the income tax. And I said, one of the things we as a group have tried to do is get someone in the Department of Justice to answer our questions. So I said, Tom, you work for the Department of Justice, the DOJ. Can you say that I'm just a greedy guy who doesn't care. Can you go to your supervisors and get someone? I said, you guys have got to have thousands and tens of thousands of employees just like we do at the IRS. Find somebody to answer our questions. And and basically our ways parted, and that was the end of the conversation. Well, I didn't learn until I was in my trial for my life. They had to disclose this email because Tom DiLeonardo was one of the witnesses for the prosecution. And so they had to disclose to me this email that Tom ended up sending to his supervisor, whose name was Ron Cimino. And Ron Cimino was the chief of the entire Western Division of the United States, the chief prosecutor for all tax prosecutions in the Western United States. So Tom, I couldn't believe it, he actually, in answer to my request, he sent an email to his boss, Ron Cimino, and I just have to nutshell it. He said, look, I met with this guy, Joe Banister. I believe, that he's sincere and that if we met with him, he would listen to what we have to say. He would listen to us. But, Ron, don't make sure that if you schedule a conference with Joe, don't bring any of his kooky friends. Okay? Because he's the only one that's maybe reasonable. Everybody else, they're crackpots, they're greedy. You don't want to talk to them, but you should talk to Joe. And somewhere he actually calls me, here it is. His associates are mostly notorious illegal tax protesters who would most assuredly be disruptive and uncooperative. But it goes to show you how, to me, crazy their thinking is, because he says that I associate with notorious illegal tax protesters, but then he says, I spent many hours working with Banister on the companion case in San Jose. I believe that he would listen to the tax division. So somehow he thinks that I've still got some modicum of sense, except that I hang around with a bunch of notorious illegal tax protesters. I don't see how he can put those two things together, but anyway, he does. Okay, so the long and short of this email, is that it proved to the jury that not only have I spent agonizing hundreds of hours, and as so many other people have done by the thousands of hours and tens of thousands, to try to get answers to sincere questions. And even this prosecutor from the Department of Justice internally tried to get an answer. And you know what Tom's testimony was, sworn testimony on the stand? That his boss, Ron Cimino, did not even answer this email. He didn't even respond to Tom's email. Now, Tom no longer works for the tax division. I don't know why that might be, but he is a prosecutor there in the East Coast now, doing other things. But I wanted to show that because to me, and obviously, when you're knee-deep in a trial where you're fighting for your life, and you know that something is true, but you just don't know if there's enough there to show to those 12 peers, to show them that you are not a criminal, that you're trying to do your best, that you're as good a citizen as any. They could trust you to babysit their kids and, babysit their bank account or whatever. You would not take a penny from it. And yet, the government is saying that you're just this nasty, nasty, nasty guy. And so this email was just like a gift from God, where it showed that I was sincere, even according to one of the DOJ prosecutors. So I would invite you to go to my website and look at it for yourself. But I have been amazed at the just really suspicious, dirty way that the government has acted about being questioned about these things. And I think it's a great way to educate others, just to show them the government's conduct, as these questions are posed to them. So thank you very much for listening to me, and have a good day.
Joe Banister. And now, if you'll all just remain seated, no milling at this point. We're not. This is not mill time. Okay. I just want to mention that they do have about 10 or 15 more lunch tickets left for $15, and the rest of the film Freedom to Fascism is going to be shown in the room. They told me what the name is. Paymon, what's the name of that room? The what? The Bougainvillea. Okay, the Bougainvillea room. Downstairs, the second half of Freedom to Fascism. All right, now we got to jump into high gear because we're already running behind schedule. So.